Okay, hello everyone. Good evening and welcome at the ING 30 Deals program. Today, BankTrack and fossil-free ING invited activists from all over the world to come to the annual general meeting of ING to raise questions about ING funding, LNG, gas, steel production and other destructive sectors. Tonight, we have activists from Mexico, USA, Czech Republic, Liberia and Brazil to tell us not so much about the facts and figures of this debate, but to tell us about their stories. To turn this debate not only in a debate about abstract concepts, but in a debate about the story behind it, about loss and resistance. But before we start, I'd like to know a little bit who we have in the audience. I can see a big part, but the back row I can't really see. The annual general meeting was today, and I'd like to know who was there as a protester, or maybe as a guest. As a protester first. Oh, quite some people. Quite some people. How was it? Really short? How was it? Can you tell? Oh, big thumbs up. Okay, great. Okay, they allowed. Great. Great. Okay, we had three of our guests, I think, were there as well. So we will talk about this a little bit more during the program. Who is here as a climate activist? Not necessarily who was there today, but who is here as a climate activist? Oh, quite some people. Who hears about this topic for the first time and was just very interested? Nice, welcome too. And last but really not least, who is a ING employee? Oh, thank you for raising your hand. You're very welcome. Exactly, nice, you're very welcome. Okay, we have a very full night tonight. We have two panels. The first panel is about liquid natural gas terminals and their impact, of course. We will discuss this with two community defenders from the USA. And our second panel is a panel about iron ore mining and steel production. And we will discuss this, and bear with me because this is the first time I do this. We discuss this with three activists from Mexico, Brazil, and Liberia. And we have live translation. I have never done that before, but I'm reassured that it's gonna be fine. There are gonna be subtitles there and there, here as well? No, there's gonna be subtitles there and there. So if you don't speak Portuguese or Spanish, you can look here and simultaneously there and there for the subtitles. Each panel will be introduced by someone from BankTrack, so we know a little bit of the context. I think I explained everything now. So without further ado, I would like to invite climate activist and campaigner from BankTrack and Extinction Rebellion, Denise Uskill.
Thank you so much. I'm a bit nervous about holding microphones and standing in front of people and talking at the same time. So bear with me because I might forget my English. Whew. Okay, let's do it. So I'm Denise. I'm a climate activist. I'm a climate campaigner at BankTrack and a climate activist in XR. I have two hats, which ING doesn't necessarily like. But yeah, BankTrack is a civil society organization focusing on corporate banks, and we aim to challenge and pressure banks into stopping their investments into fossil fuel industry. And I'm on the stage to talk about ING's sustained financial backing of the coal, LNG and gas sectors, and briefly introduce the wonderful campaigners resisting these operations from the front lines. According to scientists, well, I don't think I need to give this information to this room, but we know that according to scientists, we need to stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure and rapidly phase out existing fossil fuels. EPH has no intention of doing any of that. So EPH is a Czech company owned by a sketchy billionaire, and let alone phasing out their fossil fuel operations, it is attempting to hack the energy transition. It is employing all kinds of strategies, from buying coal plants nearing their shutdown and prolonging their lifespans, to lobbying governments to delay the coal exit, and when they do close, EPH wants to get public money as compensation. EPH supports these claims for public finance by promising to get involved in all kinds of technologies that are simply not sustainable, such as hydrogen and biomass. It actually recently transferred some of its coal operations to another company, so the main holding can be decarbonizing. More importantly, EPH has been poisoning communities. A couple of years ago, it acquired lignite mines and power plants, one of the biggest sources of CO2 in Europe. We also mentioned this at the AGM. And this is fought by Frontline communities in Lusatia for decades now, and they are still fighting. It also has the biggest development plans for fossil gas in Europe, one example being Ostiglia in Italy, resisted by the local community. So Radek Kubala has been campaigning and demonstrating against the operations of EPH in Czechia for years with the civil society organization Reset. He will talk about how it looks and feels to be living close to their operations, just in a bit. Why do we talk about this? Is because ING is one of the most important financiers of EPH, and this is why we are here as BankTrack have been in contact with Reset for months, and now we invited him to talk about EPH. So I will give the microphone to Radek shortly after I introduce two of our other guests. Before I do, I have a quick question for people in the room. How many people here know what LNG is? Okay. Short introduction for the people who might not know, but this is already good. It's fossil gas extracted via different techniques. One of them is in the US and in Canada especially is fracking, so it's a big source of fracking emissions. This gas is then cooled down and transported and then de-liquefied, so it's not the most energy efficient process. Thank you so much. Energy efficient process. Okay, so John and Melanie have been fighting against this ruthless expansion in the United States because since the beginning of war in Russia, Europe has been trying to lean off Russian gas. Unfortunately, Europe has now turned its attention to LNG from the US. This does not only worsen the climate crisis, it also comes at the expense of health, livelihoods, and well-being of communities in Texas and Louisiana. John here is the founder of Port Arthur Community Action Network. After working in the oil industry for 38 years, really? Beard turned to holding the industry accountable and became a community advocate in his hometown of Port Arthur, Texas. He founded the Port Arthur Community Action Network to fight for health and safety protections, and he has been fighting against Sempra LNG and other harmful industries in his community for years. Melanie Oldham is a public health advocate and the director of Brother Brazoria, a community group that advocates for clean air and water. She is fighting the Freeport LNG export terminal and other harmful facilities in her community. In 2022, ING was the fourth biggest financier of LNG worldwide, according to last year's fossil financing data, and it is the fifth biggest financier of LNG terminals in the US. Not only that, but ING is proud of financing LNG, touting it as a transition fuel. Of course, we know that it's not a transition fuel. It's not green, clean, or healthy for anyone. And I had slides, honestly, and I'll admit right now here that I forgot about them. So I still want to show you some LNG financing data, but I will just open it and give it back to Radek because I don't want to take too much of your time. And that was me, mic drop. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, thank you Denise for a nice introduction. My name is Radek Kubala and I'm working for an organization called Reset, and as it was previously mentioned, we are trying to stop EPH. What is EPH? It was previously mentioned, it is one of the biggest polluter in Europe and not a lot of people know it because they are trying to be as hidden as possible. And as it is owned by the Czech oligarch named Daniel Křetínský, we've been thinking, we feel like it's our responsibility to take over the campaign against this dirty company. At first, we wrote some report about what EPH is because nobody knows what EPH is. You can find it on our webpage. But we've been thinking because we've been seeing that a lot of groups around Europe and a lot of frontline communities are facing the projects, dirty projects made by the EPH. And we were thinking let's come together and let's create some kind of campaign against this dirty company and let's connect our powers. So we decided that we will organize a conference last year in Čáslav. Why in Čáslav in Czech Republic? Because one of the dirty project of EPH is happening actually right there. There are some pictures from protests. At the end, I will comment on them. But in Čáslav, the company connected to EPH is trying to extend the local landfill. And what is important, for many years they were not paying the local government the fees for storing the waste there. And they owe the Czech state something around 3 billion, and it shows how the EPH business work as a core. They are trying to avoid paying. They are trying to buy the old fossil and other assets. They are trying to avoid paying, for example, they are paying for example, taxes because they are mostly taxing in Luxembourg, in Cyprus, and so on. And they are trying to get as much public money as it possible. So who came to Germany and who is now with us trying to who are the members of the Stop EPH coalition, the people who came from frontline communities to Čáslav. First that I want to speak about are the people from Germany, from Lausitz, which is one of the biggest coal region in whole Europe. And EPH bought the company LEAG, which is the local operator. Bought them from Vattenfall. Vattenfall was, and it was the part of their strategy. Vattenfall was trying to get rid of the coal assets, and EPH were open to buy them, and now they are operating in one of the most dirty power plants in the whole Europe. And also they are extending mines there. They are also destroying the villages. For example, now there is an ongoing debate about the destroying of the village called Milorás. It's called Milorás in Czech Republic. And and also there is a debate about the other village called Podelvic. And so they are trying to extend the mine. They are trying to prolong the coal phase out in Germany. And as it was also mentioned here, they currently created a sister company to EPH called EP Energy Transition. You can see the greenwashing in this, EP Energy Transition. And they put all the dirty coal assets from Germany to there. The reason and people who are living close to the coal mines and are affected by the project, they are afraid that the reason why they did it is that they want to avoid to pay the recultivation cost, which is something what EPH as a company is mostly doing, trying to avoid paying fees, paying taxes, paying recultivation costs, and so on. So we see that EPH came to Germany, came to Lausitz. They are trying to extend the coal phase out in Germany, and also they don't want to take responsibility for for the damage that they caused there. It was also mentioned that EPH is one of the the biggest gas developer in Europe. They plan to add something like 6 new gigawatts of gas power into the European grid. and other people who came to Čáslav was connected with this type of projects. For example, there were people from Italy, from Mantova, close to the coal power plant Ostiglia, that EPH is currently trying to rebuild into the gas power plants, and the local people there are fighting the project for many years. Trying to avoid to be locked into new fossil fuel, and trying to bring some kind of new clean project that will be much better than to rebuild it into the gas infrastructure. By the way, maybe you don't know it, but currently it's last year also EPH came to Netherlands. They bought 4, I don't know if you know it, but they bought 4 gas power plants here. So if you are afraid of a gas phase out of Netherlands, you must be afraid, because this company is really dirty and really trying to prolong the phase out of fossil fuels. So take care of them. So. And also there were the people from in Čáslav. We met also with the people from Great Britain, because the EPH is also planning to build new gas units and gas power plants in Great Britain, and also they are operating then biomass power plant called line mode. And what is important to mention about the biomass coal power plant is that they are doing the biomass there as dirty as possible. They are buying woods from United States from the company that is there in some fraud case, in some crazy fraud case, and taking by ships, taking the wood to United Kingdoms and to burn it there. So I think like all dirty things you can find in fossil fuel and in dirty business, you can find it in EPH. It's quite funny that almost nobody know them. I have something like 2 minutes left to my speech. So what I can say about the owner of the Czech oligarch, the owner, he is now being well known also for owning the media. So he is especially in Czech Republic, and we see, and what we are experiencing is that he owns 1/3 of the Czech media, and also he was the owner of the Le Monde, but now he is in France buying the second biggest publisher house, Editis, and also the Telegraph in the United Kingdom. So he's quite into it. And what we see in Czech Republic is that they are really reshaping the debate, that the media in Czech Republic, they are attacking climate movement really, really hard, calling us names like Green Taliban. This is one of their favorite. And also we face it as opposition against the EPH quite currently, as we are trying to oppose them publicly, and mostly also the journalist from the dailies and from the publishing house of Daniel Křetínský. They are attacking us on social sides, and also spreading some rumors about our organizations and so on. So it's quite part of the business of EPH is spreading the disinformation and spreading of and trying to sustain their business also by winning the narrative. I have 10 seconds left, so I'll tell you. This is the latest protest. It's like a few weeks ago, and it was in Čáslav and there was the public debate about an AI process, environmental impact assessment process, and it was a huge success. So it is the last thing I would say. The local resistance against one of the projects in Čáslav is quite big, and it was really powerful action, because the locals were afraid that nobody will come there. And actually a lot of people appeared there, And there was like even more questions than today in the ING. It was like 5 hours of people from the company were roasted by all the people from Czaslav and also from us and so on. So that was powerful, and we are fighting. We are keeping fights. And if you want to join, as I mentioned, EPH bought 4 gas power plants in Netherlands. So there is also possibility for you to be involved. And of course, fighting ING is also good because ING is one of the main bank for EPH. Thank you for everything. I think just minute after it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to our first panel conversation. Before we start, I'd like to emphasize perfect. Also for the guests and a little bit, maybe I'm gonna ask you to talk a little bit slow because of the translation. Sometimes it's a little bit too fast for translation. We'll first have a panel and afterwards we have time for questions. So do hold on to your questions if you have some. I am Nuria Zandman, by the way. I forgot that, and I am your moderator for tonight. And I'd like to invite our first 2 panel guests. Firstly, and they were already introduced by Denise, climate activist and founder of Better Brazoria, Melanie Oldham. Yeah, you can join. Perfect. Thank you. I have a microphone for you. I think we have 2 microphones, so we're going to have to share them a little bit. Okay. And I'd like to also invite our second guest, also a climate activist and founder of Port Arthur Community Action Network, John Beard. Yeah, I have a microphone for you too. Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, John and Radek too, I think you went into the annual general meeting today. How are you feeling?
Okay, I guess I'll start.
I think it's on. It's on? It's on.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can you hear me? If not, my mouth's big enough. I'm sure I can make you hear me. General meeting was very interesting. Second one I was able to attend for ING.
Oh, because of for the translation, we need to but also very importantly, talk in the microphone because otherwise the translators can translate.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
The general meeting was very interesting, but especially to the extent of the hard questions I and others tried to ask them that they refused to answer. That to me was very telling, especially the one answer we kept hearing of, well, I answered that the previous question, but you didn't answer this question. So I think it makes a difference when you really directly answer it. And we were already told that there were some questions they couldn't. But it's important to remember the impact of what it has on our communities and why we are here. Because when those impacts affect people in such a way that it harms their life, health, and futures, you have to change what you're doing. You have to do something different. You have to do something better.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the questions you asked. But Radek, how are you feeling? You're feeling good too?
I think it was really powerful because there were a lot of people, and I was at few AGMs, not much, but I think it was most powerful AGM I ever was. I remember that, for example, last year at Société Générale in Paris, there were we were like a few people, and when we started to ask, that the whole crowd was booing on us and were really, really bad on us. And today it was really good atmosphere, and I really, really liked it, and I really enjoyed it.
Nice, good to hear. Good to hear. We'll talk about it in a little bit. John, I'd like to start with you. You both fight against LNG terminals. You worked for 38 years in one of those terminals before fighting against them. Can you explain a little bit how that went? How did you go from being an employee to fighting against them?
Let me correct that. I worked for 38 years for ExxonMobil refinery, not in LNG.
Okay.
But that's the base industry you have there. It's just like being in a a grove of lemons or orange trees and you say you're thirsty, well, grab an orange and squeeze. That's what you do. That's the base economy. That's where the better paying jobs are and opportunities. I'm second generation plant worker. I'm second generation union plant worker. My daughter makes the third generation of beards that is working in the petrochemical industry. But what made me change was because in all of this work I've done, I've also become a city council member and mayor pro tem in my city, but I'm also born and raised on the fence line. Right across the street was a tank farm virtually. And I could look out the kitchen window into the backyard and a block and a half away, see one of the largest refineries in the country. And that tank farm is the tank farm, or used to be tank farm, of what's now the largest refinery in the country. And the company I formerly worked for is now the second largest. So this is all within less than 20 miles of where I live. And I see it, live it, and breathe it every day. But at some point, you see that something's not quite right. Because the jobs that should have been going to people in my community, people of color especially, weren't going to them. And then we started noticing so many people getting sick with cancer, heart, lung, and kidney disease and dying. And at some point, when the companies tell you all the good things they do, all the benefits they give, and you see your community with some of the lowest income, bad housing, bad streets, then you come to realize that maybe they're just lying to you. Maybe something's wrong with that picture. Maybe they don't bring good things to life, as they like to say. So that's when I decided to do something different, because I tried as a city councilman to work, talk, and negotiate with them, and that didn't go anywhere. So when you can't negotiate, what you do next? You fight. You fight back. You push back any way you can to get them to understand, and when they don't understand, then you have to resort to other methods. I like to say it like this: I can tickle you with a feather, or I can hit you with a baseball bat. It's your choice.
Yeah. Hey, and this coming to realize the impact of this industry, was this something that came to you gradually, or do you remember like waking up one morning and realizing I need to start fighting this?
Well, it occurs over time, because my parents came there, and I'm giving away my age, so don't say anything, came to Port Arthur, my mother from Louisiana, my dad from East Texas, back in the late 20s, early 30s. And they talked about how if your house was white, because we lived, like I said, right across from the tank farm, you would go to, you sit on the porch in the evening and watch the sunset, drink coffee, talk with your neighbors, but wake up that next morning and see a stain, a yellow stain or something inside your house, or these little black dots on your car if you left your car out overnight. Well, that was coming from the refineries. And if it's that coke dust that's hazardous material, and you have fruit trees in your yard, and we grew them, then it's getting on the fruit. So now, if you eat the fruit, what does that mean? Or better yet, if it rains and it gets in the soil, and the plants pull nutrients from the soil, you might be eating and ingesting that. So over time, and looking at these things, and then working on city council, and talking with these people, and working directly with plant managers and the like, I began to see that this picture just didn't look good, and it wasn't looking good for me. And if it wasn't looking good for me, it wasn't looking good for my community. So I had to do something. There's a saying, when you know better, you do better. And that's what I had to do.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you briefly described already the impact that this industry has on your community. Can you describe a little bit more how you see this impact back? What are things that you experience in your community?
Well, the personal experience I had with that is I have 2 of my 4 children. Well, my oldest son had to have a kidney transplant. Now, there's no history of kidney disease on both sides of his family for 3 generations. How did he just be the one? And then my daughter had a small tumor behind her eye, between her eye and her brain. A glioblastoma, it's called. If you heard about it in the United States, former Senator John McCain died from a malignant tumor like that. Fortunately, hers was benign. But then I know of other people, like a retired school teacher, and her son and I went to school together. She died of severe COPD just last July. And then I know of other people that have gotten sick and died. A friend of mine that worked in the plant contracted cancer, By the time he found out about it, the doctors told him it was nothing they could do. He had 6 weeks to live. Go home and get your affairs in order. Well, he only got 4 weeks, and he spent the last 3 of those heavily sedated because he was in so much pain. So he never got to retire. He never got to enjoy the work that almost 40 years he put in. But I had the opportunity to retire and to move on to something else, and I chose to do this work because it's wrong for a job to hurt and harm the lives of people. I chose to work in the plant, but the plant had an obligation to help me protect myself by giving me the right equipment, the right knowledge, so I'd know how to keep myself, the person working next to me, and the people out there who don't work in the plant, who didn't sign up for this, safe. But they don't do the same for the community, because when an odor goes out, when there's a release of something toxic, and it's in the air that we all have to breathe, I can get protective equipment in the plant, but when it goes outside the fence line, when it goes outside of the plant, who protects the people out there like you? Yeah. And sometimes you never even know what's happened until you smell it, and by then, in some cases, depending on what it is, it may be too late. So that made me feel a sense of obligation because of the knowledge I got working in the plant. That's the decision I made to be a city councilman, which was to serve and help people and to make our lives better, because we have some extremely bad problems there. So many people in poverty, so many people not living well. A city that got hit in the last 17 years by 5 major hurricanes, most of which were caused by climate change, which these very companies are helping cause. And when they're funded by banks, financial institutions, and other lenders, they are in turn funding climate change and the killing and the death of people in communities like mine.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll talk about the role of ING in this a little bit. Before we talk about it, I want to talk about what you're doing now, what you're fighting against, because you founded the Port Arthur Community Action Network. How do you fight against these companies with your organization?
Well, my old company had a saying that they take on the world's toughest energy problems. I like to say pecan, my organization takes on the world's toughest energy companies and wins. We just won a recent court case against Sempra LNG, which is trying to build the 3rd one in Port Arthur. When you go home, Google Earth Port Arthur, Texas, and you'll see all of the petrochemical infrastructure around it. But we have 3 LNGs sitting virtually in my backyard within 10 miles of each other, one within 4 miles. So what we do is we challenge their permits, because they have to get these permits in order to do business. And then we challenge them based on the fact that they are going to contribute more to the air quality in terms of making it harmful than it is making it better. And that harm they're going to create, which is already there because of the numerous petrochemical facilities, is now going to make it worse. So basically what I do, I point out the fact to them that they're an accessory to murder. They're helping kill people because the toxins they release are harmful and hazardous to life and health of people, animals, plants, and you name it. And we fight them everywhere we can. We take them to court. We have public and community meetings. We educate the public. But the best route I've found to combating and fighting these is to take a legal route. Because at some point, they have to realize that if they're hurting and harming people, you got to make it right. You got to stop what you're doing. And if you've done it to too many people, now you become what I like to call a financial liability.
Thanks a lot. We'll get back to you in a little bit. Melanie, I'd like to go to you now. You had a somewhat similar trajectory, not really, because I believe it was your ex-husband working in the industry. Can you explain to us how you came to, having an ex-husband working there, to fighting against these companies?
Okay. Hello, you all. Again, my name's Melanie, and I'm from Texas, the big state of Texas, which, as you know, is oil and gas state. But the good news is we are getting more renewable energy there. But anyway, I grew up in a small town in the state of Missouri, went to the University of Missouri, and I became a physical therapist, a healthcare professional. And then I met my ex-husband, Ken, and he was a chemical engineering student. So 40 years ago, he got his first job at Dow Chemical, so we moved down to the Freeport, Angleton area, and he I guess I noticed, like they say, power and money can, corrupt or change even the best people. We were married 25 years, but after we had our children, I guess I got into this mainly because of my children and caring about other people. But anyway, my ex and I would have quite a few heated conversations, debates, because I had done some research because of my kids. We adopted twins who came from up north in Oklahoma down to where we lived in southern Brazoria County, right on the coast. And they already had asthma, but their asthma got worse, got really bad when they moved down to our area. And so I knew something was wrong, and they had to take their inhalers to school. But long story short, I signed up for this class and also my son Michael, I found out, has a learning disability. So I signed up for this class for parents called Partners in Policy Making. And we went 9 weekends to Houston and up to Austin, and we learned how to go up there and testify in front of committees about public health and adoption care, that sort of thing. But while I was up there, I started going to the Environmental Regulation Committee meetings at the Capitol in Austin. Long story short, I found out how bad my county, Brazoria County, which is just south of Houston, is. I was shocked to find out that we're like severe non-attainment for ozone. That's as bad as you can get, according to the EPA.
What does it mean, severe unattainment?
Yeah, severe non-attainment.
Yeah.
And some areas, like John, is marginal, but ours, there's serious, and then there's severe non-attainment for ozone. And in my area, as you know, ozone is made up of VOCs and NOx and sunlight. We got all that in our area because we have Dow Chemical, BASF, Phillips 66, Chevron, on and on. But anyway, the ozone causes breathing, respiratory problems. So my children, their asthma got worse, and I started, again, doing more research. And in 2008, a few of us started a group called Citizens for Clean Air, Clean Water, and we were a real small group starting out. We'd meet at the library quarterly, but we eventually, we helped shut down a terrible company in 2017 just by constantly, people in our group would call TCEQ. We were able to get a lawyer to help our group because Freeport is a very low economic town. We're called a sacrifice community, like John's and others on the Louisiana, Texas coast. But, where they always put industry and LNG seems to be the sacrifice communities, like basically, people of color and very, very low income, and they don't think that we can speak up and fight, or we don't have the legal assistance to do that. But we now have that, which has changed a lot of things for our small local groups. But so anyway, the more I learned and the more I talked to my ex-husband, it's like he didn't care. The companies, you want to make money for the company, and then you get to move up. But I've always, I think everybody has the right to clean air, clean water, quality of life. And so that's kind of, since 2008, my group has started to grow, Better Brazoria. And that's due to a lot of things, but like John said, having people help us and legal advice, strategy. After COVID, in 2020, I learned how to get on Zoom calls. And I'm a Sierra Club member, so it was wonderful getting to meet John and different people, frontline leaders and members in Louisiana, Texas. We got to, talk on Zoom, get together, and it's like you don't feel so alone. There's other people fighting similar battles, and that makes a difference. And then on these calls, we would have, like I said, Sierra Club attorneys and Earthworks and Texas Campaign for the Environment. And we started to, and also Lone Star Legal, which because our communities are so low income, we qualified for services from them. But with that help, we've had some victories too. We were able to shut down a terrible company in 2017 called Gulf Chemical and Metallurgical
And
that put out heavy metals.
how did you do this? Because John talked a little bit about doing it, the legal way. Is this how you go about it as well, or do you have a different tactic?
Yes, with this company, like I said, they'd been there for 30 years, and they were supposed to recycle dirty spent catalyst from a refinery, and they did recycle it, but they were recycling it right into our rivers and our air. So again, we got more and more citizens involved. We got the Texas Department of State Health to come down, and people had their blood and urine tested, and sure enough, there was heavy metals. And because even though Dow, Bottiche, all the companies were there, they were the only company that put out a significant amount. And so they finally, Texas TCEQ, Texas Commission for Environmental Quality in Texas, gave them the second largest fine ever in Texas. It was $9 million. And eventually in 2017, they went bankrupt. So it shows the power of citizens, people speaking up, documenting the pollution, constantly calling, and then getting the legal advice so we could actually, take them to court. So that was one of our first victories.
Yeah, thank you. It's very impressive. And if we take a few steps back, you talked a lot about how you started it and how you go about. John already talked about the impact on his community. Do you recognize that? What is the impact you see on the community where you live?
Yeah, again, I've done a lot of study research about various types of emissions and public health. But again, Freeport, Texas, where I live, is a town about 13,000 people and surrounded by Dow Chemical, BASF. I live 3 miles from Freeport LNG that in 2022 had the vapor cloud explosion fire. And so, yes, the quality of life is, it's improving due to people and groups speaking up. But our air and water, we're constantly fighting for that. And with our local group, we attend commissioners' meetings, city council meetings. We're trying to educate the community and also listen to the community and what their main concerns are and speak up. So again, in our group, there's people from all walks of life, retired people, young people going to college. It's like I say, a multi-generational fight. No matter what age we are, where we're from, we can contribute because we all believe in climate change. We know we're not only saving the health of our communities, but we're saving the earth. And so, down the road, I'll talk about Freeport LNG. We've dealt with my group, Dow Chemical, like I said, BASF. I have never in my life come across a company like Freeport LNG that is so risky, dangerous. They have a terrible safety record. But unfortunately, in 2014, ING Banks helped them build Freeport LNG. But later on, I could tell you about the explosion, but they have ongoing problems, and we try to watchdog that. But I just don't understand why, a bank or financiers or insurance companies would continue to finance companies that are proven to have terrible safety records. They don't have enough employees. I mean, what they found from that investigation was shocking. And if it applies, there's only on the coast 5 LNGs. Freeport LNG is the second largest. And if all those problems they found at our LNG, we know they're similar up and down to where John's LNGs, and we're fighting because you may know in January we finally had a victory. President Biden put a pause on new LNGs. That helps some, but again, we already live with the all the issues, the methane that comes off of these terrible LNG plants, and it's frustrating, but we have had wins the last couple of years, again, with a lot of friends and allies and organizations, and just meeting other frontline folks and we compare notes and strategies, And it's so good to have wins.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like let's give a round of applause. Yeah. You talked about ING already a little bit, about ING funding these companies. John and Radek, you went to the annual general meeting today. John, did you ask questions about this during the meeting?
Yes, I did ask them a question. I asked them whether or not they understood what they were investing in. You're investing in a company that is going to put pollutants into the air that we have to breathe in a community that is already oversaturated and overburdened with toxins such as benzene, formaldehyde, sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, particulate matter. In the case of one of those companies, it emits over 11,000 tons of that a year. And this stuff is so fine in the air that you can smell it, but you can't see it. Kind of smells like the old matches you used to have when you strike a box of matches, or, the little matchbox. It smells like that. But what people don't know about it is those sulfur compounds, when they combine with moisture in the air or in your lungs if you breathe them, turn into sulfuric acid. That stuff will eat through metal. But then what's worse, those particles of these substances, no matter what they are, when they get in the air and you breathe them, though you can't see them, they are so small in the 2.5 micron range. That's 1,000 times the width of a human hair, smaller. That they go directly from the air you breathe into your lungs and directly into your bloodstream. And that's where you start to have cancers, tumors, various growths, and all of that. So fighting these companies and pushing back against them, the best way I saw to win that fight is to go where the money is.
Yeah.
There's a saying, if you want to really get somebody's attention, I can get any of your attention in here that I want to. You know what I do? All I got to do is get hold of your money. If I grabbed your wallet or your purse, I'd have your attention. If I stopped you from being able to work and make a good living so you couldn't pay your bills and help people, I'd have your undivided attention. Well, that's what we've got to do, ING. We've got to get all of these companies to know, as I said earlier, that they are at an extreme financial and responsibility risk, because what they are doing and supporting is hurting and killing people. And when you hurt somebody, if you take your car and hit my car, you're liable for damages. If I damage your house or your home, you're liable for damages. If you and I get in a fight and I beat you up, I'm liable to pay for your medical bills, because our court systems allow us to sue and get compensation for damages. Well, why aren't we doing that with these companies that are hurting our communities? And we're already suffering enough. We have twice the state and national average for not just cancer, but heart, lung, and kidney disease. The third largest emitter of benzene in the entire country is a French company, Total. The largest emitter of ethylene oxide in the country is another facility that's a little town adjacent to Port Arthur. Both of those are cancer clusters. And then you have one of the LNGs, and guess what they're putting in the air, y'all? Formaldehyde. Anybody know what that is? Formaldehyde's a main ingredient in what? In bombing fluid. So essentially, we're dead men walking in Port Arthur. We're breathing this in the air. And then we're seeing it in the air, too. And then it's affecting lives and health of people. Don't you think if somebody were hurting you, you'd do something? You try to find a way to help your community, to help your loved ones, your neighbors, your friends. You can't sit back and do nothing when you know what's going on.
And very, very briefly, just because of the time, how was the answer of ING? Was it somewhat satisfying?
No, I wasn't satisfied at all. Not a, damn bit. Because he avoided the question. Because it's real simple. If you knew this, because we've talked to them before, they investigate. They hire people to go out and find out all this information. And when they investigated, they had to know Port Arthur had the problems I just told you about. So now, if you invested money in putting another plant there that's going to add to those problems, it's going to make the air worse, it's going to make more people sick, and you did it anyway, what does that say? How responsible are you for funding that when you know or you should have known, it made people sick. They talked about, I heard the guy say that they, talk about and look into all of these different things. Well, damn it, then why are you still doing it? You have to be held responsible and be accountable. This is not about trying to hurt anybody. Let me speak to the people from ING. This is not about hurting your job or hurting your opportunities. You have a right to have a job, just like I did working for a company. But my job shouldn't kill the people that work in the plant, and it shouldn't kill the people that don't work in the plant, that live outside. And that's what this fight is all about.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Radek, very briefly, how do you reflect on this? How do you agree? What is your idea about this?
Yeah, I agree, because mostly they were the ING, they were trying to get rid of the question, and they were trying to not answer the question. I was also asking if they will end the cooperation with EPH, and they didn't tell much about the EPH. They were telling only about their coal policy and how awesome their coal policy is. So yeah, I had the same impression, and I remember the answer to your question, John, and they totally avoid responsibility in both of our questions.
Okay, thanks. I have space for a few questions. I see someone holding up their hands. You're going to go there with the microphone. Please speak in the microphone so we can translate it. There, the gentleman in the blue sweater.
Well, thank you. It was a very inspiring story. But my question is, ING is financing the mob, right? I call them the mob, the climate mob. But that also means that the CEO of ING and his board, they have a huge moral issue, financing them. But they are not going to do anything unless they are forced by regulation to change their financing, because it's too cheap for them in the short term to finance LNG, right? So the question is, who do you think are the people that you can appeal to so that the regulation changes where the financing of the mob, the climate mob, becomes so prohibitively expensive that they'll have to go somewhere else?
The way I'd approach that is very much the way you're saying, but I would not approach it so much political, because there's social pressure. These companies cherish their public image, how they look like knights in shining armor, how they do the good things. If you were at the meeting, you saw them playing these videos of people in various walks of life and showing how we make life better. But man, what do you think would happen if I showed them what they're doing in Freeport or in Port Arthur? To see that. And then all of a sudden you'd get mad, because just like I told you just a minute ago, how would you feel if someone came in your city or your neighborhood and polluted and did things which you know would harm you and your children? Would you stand by and do nothing? I dare say not a single one of you would say no. You would do whatever you could. So we have to attack their social license. Then we have to attack their money. And then we also have to attack the ability to get insurance, because they can't insure the thing, they can't do anything. So we've got to put pressure on all of those points, and then put pressure on the politicians, because you know what? Those slimy rascals, I almost said bastard, but they're rascals. They allow these people to do it by simply ignoring the law, by looking the other way while they take money under the table. That has to end. That has to stop. If we've gone to some of their homes, some of our colleagues have gone to Biden's home in Rhode Island? Yeah, gone to his home and picketed and had signs out and did bullhorns in front of his house. We've been in front of the White House doing the same thing. This big mouth was heard, I was told, even inside the White House, leading some cheers and talking about this thing. But we have to put pressure on them, because life is too precious. Not a single person should lose their life to anything these people are doing. I don't mind you making money, but your making money shouldn't kill me, and it shouldn't kill my family and neighbors.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add real quick, last thing I'll say, every time John and other frontline leaders of communities speak, we talk about sacrificed communities, the high rates of cancer, risk of explosion, and we invite them to come and see our communities. We've invited the sustainability leaders of ING last year, but until they come, nobody can understand what we live with every day until people from ING, sustainability leaders, whoever, come and see, let us show you. We have the right to clean air, clean water. We shouldn't have to worry about methane and VOCs killing us and killing our earth. And I know there's got to be good people in ING that understand we're real people and come and see, talk to us. We have our rights to quality of life. And so we hope that ING Bank will do the right thing and protect us, sacrifice communities and our earth. So
Let me say this too on the dovetail, to dovetail what Melanie said. No show of hands. You stock and shareholders, you got a part to play in this. You need to question where your money is going, how they're making their money, and if they're investing in communities like ours in these projects. Because if they're hurting people, then you need to start hurting them and put pressure on them to change. Because until they change their policies, they're not going to change the way they do their business. That's the key thing. Enough stock and shareholders say, we got to change what we're doing. You can't do that anymore. You have to figure something else out. But we cannot continue to allow this to happen to people on the other side of the world you never met. And there's some good people, too. They're just as good as each and every one of you. Why should they have to suffer, die, and have cancer? Stock and shareholders can do a lot to move boards of directors and CEOs. Try it and see.
Thanks a lot. I have space for one question, but then the panel guests need to promise me to answer this one briefly, because otherwise we will be here until 10 o'clock or 10:30. Who has a very urgent question? Yeah.
To Radek, it's a bit of a not in my backyard question, but you were talking about EPA's buying gas plants in the Netherlands for. What do you expect will happen with these plants? What will happen here?
Oh, quickly, EPA strategy for Netherlands. Yeah, we don't know actually, but what we know from our experience with the EPH in other countries is that they were buying the assets that the Western companies don't want, and they bought it, and they were trying to prolong their and extend their operation. And second, trying to get the compensation from the government. So they were, for example, in Germany, they were delaying coal phase out and pushing government, lobbying, threatening them with international arbitration by the Energy Charter Treaty and so on, and forcing them to give them compensation back, so they will get something out of it. I think this is something what most probably you can expect also here, but we don't know their strategy in Netherlands because they are quite new here.
Okay, thanks a lot. A round of applause for all the guests. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have a short intermezzo. We have a poem that's going to be read out loud by Aline Marins, a climate activist and biologist from Brazil.
Boa noite a todos. Eu sou a Aline, vim de Santa Cruz, Rio de Janeiro, Brasil. Faço parte do coletivo Marta Trindade. E eu vou recitar esse poema que é de uma companheira minha do coletivo. E esse poema retrata um pouco do que a gente sente convivendo todos os dias com uma siderúrgica tão danosa à nossa saúde, né? O nome é Meu Território, de Vanessa Afonso Andrade. Da minha sala, eu sinto o cheiro de chuva. Escuto os passarinhos que se aninham nas árvores. Escuto a TV da vizinha. E escrevo. E sinto. Sinto que, quando não chove, o cheiro insuportável me entranha nas narinas. Sinto que o respirar é cada vez mais pesado. Sinto que o resistir tem seus altos e baixos. A sensação de pertencimento a um território se dá mais pela dor do que pelo amor. Só que é aqui que as lutas e resistências se encontram, até que a gente não mais respire. Isso é um pouco do que a gente sente convivendo todos os dias com uma empresa tão ruim dentro das nossas casas. Obrigada.
That was very beautiful, thank you. I'd like to introduce our next climate activist from Banktrack, who is going to introduce the next topic, because from LNG terminals we go to iron mining and steel production. So I'd like to introduce Julia Hovenier from Banktrack.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is actually the second time today that I'm standing in front of a microphone talking about the steel industry and ING, because I also attended ING shareholder meeting today to question them about their policy for the steel industry. And here's why. ING is the third largest European financier of the steel industry. Raise your hands if you have like a general understanding of the climate impact of the steel industry. Excellent. You've all been reading the Tata Steel reports. That makes me happy. For those of you who don't know, and it's totally fine if not, because I really didn't know this before I started this job, but the steel industry is responsible for 11% of global CO2 emissions, and that's because steel is produced by burning a ton of coal with a ton of iron ore, among other metals. But it's one of the most climate catastrophizing industries on this earth. And not only that, but it's also rife with human rights abuses, land grabbing, deforestation for mining, etc. And I'll leave our guests later tonight to talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, ING is the third largest European financier and the 16th largest worldwide. And since 2016, they've given 6.6 billion for coal-based steel. So our guests tonight come from 3 different projects, all either directly or indirectly financed by ING. So we have 2 companies that we'll be covering. The first is ArcelorMittal, and the second is Ternium. They're both Luxembourg-based steel companies, and as you may put together, oftentimes these steel companies or major companies are based in places where they don't have operations but are able to receive tax benefits. That is certainly the case with ArcelorMittal and Ternium, although Arcelor used to have operations in Luxembourg as well. But the projects that we're going to be talking about tonight come from Mexico, Brazil, and Liberia. First, I'll start with Ternium Brazil. Those of you who were there today at the ING shareholder meeting heard from my friend and colleague Nalu, who comes from Rio de Janeiro, and she spoke a bit about ING's relationship with Ternium Brazil. But in 2017, ING participated in a 1.5 billion loan to Ternium in order to acquire a steel plant in Rio de Janeiro. They only gave 100 million of this, but it was direct acquisition finance, and according to the OECD guidelines and the IFC performance standards, they're held accountable for this as financiers. And then the second 2 projects that we'll be discussing, we have 2 iron ore mines, one based in Mexico, and it's actually a joint venture between Ternium and ArcelorMittal. This is in southwest Mexico. It's called the Peña Colorada mine, and the other iron ore mine is based in Liberia. It's an entirely wholly owned subsidiary of ArcelorMittal called the ArcelorMittal Liberia Iron Ore Mine. And ING, actually, of the 6.6 billion that they've given to the steel industry since 2016, over half of that has gone to ArcelorMittal alone. ArcelorMittal is by far ING's largest steel client, so please keep this in mind as we talk about the projects that we're going to be discussing tonight. This is really it's the second largest steel company on earth. It's also expanding its coal-based operations globally and expanding a lot of its iron ore mining at the sacrifice of local communities. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to them to tell you a little bit about why that's problematic.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, like Julia already mentioned, we have 2 other guests joining us for the panel. First of all, I'd like to introduce community activist from Mexico, Rogelio Rosales. Thank you for joining us. And last but, you can sit down. And last but certainly not least, founder of Green Advocates Liberia and supporter of local communities, John Brownell. Perfect. Rogelio, why not start with you? You live close to a ternium mine.
Muy bien. Bueno, sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Rogelio Rosales Contreras, originario de la comunidad indígena náhuatl del sur de Jalisco, México. Sí, efectivamente estamos en una zona minera. Esta comunidad indígena, pues quizás es una de las más antiguas en México. Por ahí dentro de sus documentos que lo acreditan como terreno comunal o pueblo originario que decimos nosotros, es un documento de 1757 firmado por un virrey de España llamado José Antonio de Mendoza, de 1957. Entre otros documentos, hay otros por ahí, pero debido a que en la comunidad cuenta con muchos recursos naturales y minerales, en los años de 1757 hacia adelante han sido saqueados sus recursos, pero también sus documentos. Los habitantes de las comunidades indígenas fueron invadidos por gente ajena de la comunidad. Entonces trataron de despojarlos de sus predios, pero también de sus documentos, como una forma de que no pudieran acreditar su propiedad. Entonces, más tarde, en 1921, fue una primera masacre de 2 comunidades de las gentes que no podían despojarlos. Llegaban y los masacraban, los mataban por gente del gobierno, del Estado, el ejército. Entonces, fueron 2 familias en Timbillos en 1921. Los mataron ahí, 2 familias completas, los abandonaron a su suerte, ¿sí? Más tarde, ya como en 1970, esos predios ya fueron trabajados por la empresa minera, en ese tiempo Peña Colorada, ¿sí? Más tarde, como en 1970, nos enteramos que antes de ser era paraestatal, pero luego es vendida a particulares, a Ternium y ArcelorMittal, ¿sí? En los años 80 se inicia esta venta. Pero antes de esto, antes que se trabajara la mina, en las zonas hubo una deforestación muy fuerte. Como hay mucha madera de pino, parota y cedro, se trabajó y se invadió, pero de manera ilegal. Hubo una deforestación fuerte que años después de que se estuvo talando, las comunidades indígenas, ahí son alrededor de 45 poblados dentro del municipio de Cuautitlán, se empezó a escasear el agua de los ríos, arroyos pequeños que estaban donde la gente pues caminaba y por el cerro, por cualquier parte que caminaba, tomaba agua de ese arroyo. Pero luego se empezaron a escasear, a secar, la lluvia se empezó a dejar. Entonces se hizo una movilización muy fuerte y en 1986 se decretó como una reserva de la biosfera Sierra de Manantlán. Creo que es uno de los únicos lugares donde está el maíz perenne. Es el abuelito el ancestro del maíz normal que conocemos. Entonces es una zona protegida, pero la empresa minera, paramos la tala, pero luego la empresa minera empezó ya a trabajar ya en los años 70, pero bueno, la gente en un principio lo vio como normal, ¿sí? Porque era paraestatal, pero luego cuando ya se hizo privada, empezaron los efectos, ¿sí? Primero porque la empresa minera trataba de sobornar a las representantes de la comunidad, en este caso los representantes del ejido, ¿sí? Porque antes de ser comunidad le impusieron un ejido, ¿sí? Ya le quitaron el título de representación comunal. Es algo parecido como una pequeña propiedad, ya quitándole la representación comunal como una forma de ser más vulnerable para poder comercializar su terreno. Entonces, en esta lucha se inició de 1970 hacia acá, ya que habíamos logrado parar la tala de bosques. Entonces, en esta lucha, después del 21, también se dio muy fuerte porque aunque no era la empresa la que actuaba, era el mismo ejército quien trataba todavía de despojar a las personas de sus propiedades. Entonces empezó a matar a los luchadores indígenas, ¿sí? Pero también a sacar sus documentos. En 1954, el 11 de abril, un poblado llamado Tenamazla fue asesinado ahí las personas y en 15 días desalojaron toda esa comunidad, pero en ese momento mataron a 2 personas, ¿sí? De ahí para acá empezaron los asesinatos por la defensa del territorio y por la defensa del bosque. Entonces, esta lucha ha costado vidas, porque ya en 1980 ya empezaban los líderes. Tengo aquí algunas fechas. En 1947, un luchador llamado Arnulfo Elías, que fue uno de los más fuertes, también fue desaparecido, que hasta la fecha no sabemos dónde está. Ya en 2010, ya la empresa, como era particular, empezó a contratar con el crimen, a contratar el crimen organizado para aplacar las luchas, porque la gente ya estaba viendo que era mucha contaminación y mucho destrozo de los bosques, donde iban deforestando para ampliar su extracción minera. Creo que la empresa minera es una de las más fuertes que extrae mineral en México. Entonces, ya empezaron a sobornar a las autoridades, los tribunales, la Semarnat, la Procuraduría Agraria y sobre todo el gobierno del Estado también, que cuando la gente hacía sus demandas no eran escuchados, ¿sí? A pesar de que había fotografías, había manifestación de que se estaba deforestando fuertemente y se estaba escaseando el agua, tampoco hacían caso. Entonces, ya en el 2010, ya el crimen empezó a actuar, porque ya no solo era la empresa, sino los criminales que estaban levantando a los dirigentes. Por aquí tengo algunas fechas donde han levantado algunos. En el 2012 fue Celedonio Monroy Prudencio, que fue sacado de su domicilio porque era un defensor fuerte que estaba denunciando abiertamente la mina y los daños. En 2021 fue el J. Santos Isaac Chávez, candidato a encabezar una planilla del comisariado ejidal. En el 2020, el 26 de octubre, mataron a mi hijo también, porque yo desde los 12 años, cuando era estudiante de secundaria, he venido haciendo acciones fuertes en defensa del territorio y de la lucha también. Ya en 2022, Javier Contreras González, y ya en el 2023, Higinio Trinidad de la Cruz, también otro dirigente que ha estado defendiendo fuertemente, fue asesinado, sacado de la presidencia municipal para poder asesinarlo. Aquí lo fuerte y lo grave es que el mismo gobierno municipal y el gobierno del Estado, y junto con el crimen, han llevado a cabo estas acciones. Entonces creo que es fuerte lo que estamos haciendo, lo hemos defendido con sangre. Lo peor es que la contaminación es fuerte, es visible para todos, y creo que no somos escuchados. La gente ya no sabemos qué hacer. Hemos logrado la asesoría de Tsiquini, quien nos ha traído a estos espacios, organizaciones internacionales. Espero que juntos podamos hacer algo y podamos ser escuchados. Allá sí la gente no puede denunciar, está temerosa, no puede levantar la voz, porque son sacados de sus casas y hasta sus familias son amenazados cuando no nos encuentran a nosotros. ¿Sí? Hasta ahí dejaría.
Thank you very much.
No sé, una pregunta.
Thank you very much. You talk about a lot of exploitation, a very long history of exploitation. You talk about people getting massacred, land that is stolen. You are fighting these companies. What are ways you are trying to fight them right now?
Aquí ahorita la lucha que estamos dando es hacer público el problema, porque después, antes de 2010, la gente ya no confió en las dependencias porque no eran escuchados, no eran atendidas sus demandas, sino que los tribunales, las procuradurías, Semarnat, solamente recibían los documentos, pero en 2 o 3 años las resoluciones salían favorables a la empresa. De 2010 hacia acá, la gente ha callado. Ha callado porque aquella persona que se manifiesta, presenta un documento, y yo creo que no tarda en 8 días que es levantado o es amenazado él o su familia. Entonces ha habido muchos desplazamientos, hay gente que ha salido de sus casas. Después de 1954, del 11 de abril, que fue el primer lugar donde un poblado completo tuvo que salir, y en 15 días de esas fechas del 54, creo que mataron más de 20 personas en diferentes lugares porque ahí los encontraban. Fueron los que se organizaban para defender las invasiones que ya se iniciaban en aquel momento.
Thank you very much.
Por último, sí quisiera aclarar pues que están destruyendo una comunidad fuerte porque tenemos valores ancestrales, formas de organización, una cultura donde estamos rescatando la lengua náhuatl, y creo que nos la están destruyendo nuestra forma de organización y nuestras formas jurídicas. O sea, están tratando por encima de todo, y pues lo peor es que no somos escuchados. Contamos pues que los bancos que están financiando estas empresas hagan conciencia, y creo que lo estamos manifestando. Ojalá y ustedes sean portadores de este mensaje y podamos juntos hacer algo por todos, y el clima no solo de allá, sino el clima a nivel mundial. Gracias.
Thank you for sharing that and for all of your hard work, of course. We will get back to you in a little bit. I'd like to go to you, John. We originally invited Dara Konka, a farmer from Nimba County in Liberia. His farm has been confiscated by ArcelorMittal, one of the companies Julia was talking about. Due to visa problems, he could not be here, but we are very happy that you are here because you are one of the people helping him, because his story kind of relates to what we just heard. You talked a lot about land that was stolen. Dara's story is kind of the same or heavily relates to that. Can you tell a little bit about his story and your role in it?
Thank you. My name is John Brownell. I work with Green Advocates International in Liberia. We are an environmental and human rights organization that provide pro bono legal service to communities that are affected by operations of multinational corporations across the Republic of Liberia, and also in the network with countries across West Africa fighting for economic, social, and cultural rights for indigenous people. ArcelorMittal got a contract with the Liberian government and signed an NDA during the transitional government after the Civil War in 2005. That agreement was ratified by the new government by 2006 after we had the elections and ended the Civil War. Dara Konka lived within the vicinity of the concession in a town called Bapa. Dara is a member of an advocacy group called the Nimba Advocates for Economic, Environmental, and Resource Rights. He sent me this message to share with you. He is currently at the embassy in Abidjan awaiting his visa, so I will just read to you what he said, and then I can continue. He said that Dara said that ArcelorMittal Liberia and their subcontractors illegally entered his family land with an excavator for 5 days while they were away. They destroyed all our plants, our crop, to make an access road to build a dam for their processing plant that is being built in Nimba. He said, we have no place to live and no crops to eat anymore. Besides me, there are some other 25 farmers around my vicinity that have the same situation. ArcelorMittal prepared a compensation document without our input. And so far, for the last 2 years, nothing has been paid to us as farmers. We are virtually displaced. AML, which is ArcelorMittal Liberia, is not paying any attention to us. And he went forward to say that this company that is receiving finance from ING, for which they refuted today, and I would like to say that if you buy the bullet and I shoot the gun, we are both complicit in murder. So the excuse given by the company to the bank today does not hold any water. So he wants the pollution, land and forest degradation by ArcelorMittal with impunity to stop. There's absolute loss of community livelihood without ending any form of compensation by this company that is receiving finance from the ING. The community have no access to information, and there's nothing what we refer to as free, prior, and informed consent, wherein communities as stakeholders are being consulted before decisions are made. They have no safe drinking water. There is no defined buffer zone for the mines. ArcelorMittal has delayed payment for their crops that have been checked over 3 years ago. And the most disturbing part is that this company uses state and private security to intimidate, harass, and arrest and make sure that anybody with dissent are put out of the community so that nobody can speak against the company. And so he said that it is important, this advocacy is important to him because I have problem with the environmental and land formalization activities that ArcelorMittal is abusing. I need to educate the communities on their rights to their land and the environment as customary land owning community. He also said that the land is decreasing and the population is increasing. And so he wants to know what is ArcelorMittal with financing from big international banks going to do to mitigate the climate change that is happening. As you may know, Liberia alone as a country hosts about 42% of the biodiversity of the entire West African region. So Liberia is the lungs, so to speak, of West Africa. And with the forest exploitation and damage without any form of mitigation by ArcelorMittal, we are losing the forest and our air is not clean anymore. So, so for us at Green Advocates, we provide pro bono legal service to these communities. In case communities members are arrested, we go in and try to secure the release on bond through our lawyers. Also, with these communities, we try to empower them and inform them about their land rights. But with ArcelorMittal, the amount of impunity is so unpredictable, unanswerable, because they are in cahoots with the politicians, with the government, and special units of the police are being used to protect this company against the indigenous people who live in that locality. And so I was fortunate to have visited highlighted Dada's village. We ate in a village, but the picture now, after the dam has been built, that whole village is flooded and has been completely evacuated by the residents of that village. And when I saw the picture, I nearly shed tears because I know exactly I was there and ate food there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. You also went to the annual general meeting today. How was that? What did you ask them?
I was at ING
It's on.
annual general meeting today, and I said to them that they have this big board saying, do your thing. But in my own mind, they're not doing their thing because they are financing company with bad human and environmental rights record. We expect ING to provide human rights due diligence not only to the companies that they finance, but also extend their arms to the communities and NGOs or CSO that are working in this community to be able to ensure that due diligence is within the framework of the contract and not only putting profit over people. I also highlighted the environmental degradation by ArcelorMittal in Liberia at the mines. And just to say that the operation of ArcelorMittal is not only at the mines up in the north, along the railway corridor from the north to the south, where the iron ore is being put onto ships. You have spillage of the ore onto the community land, and then the conveyor belt, the ship does not dock at the port. It docks on high sea. And so they use small tugboats, empty the ore onto the tugboat, and then those ore are taken onto the high sea, damaging the ocean. And fishermen along the ocean are also complaining that, oh, we are not able to catch fish, our livelihood is at stake because the ore, we have to go deep into sea. And there is always clash between the ArcelorMittal boats and the fishermen at the sea.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you in a little bit. I'd like to go to Alini. In your community or in your region, there's also a mine from Ternium. How is that impacting your community?
Então, né, desde quando a Ternium chegou lá, ela já vem causando muito danos, né? Porque quando ela começou a sua construção, ela tinha batistacas muito fortes que destruíam as casas, né? Suas estruturas, causavam rachaduras. E a partir daí, já desde a sua construção, ela já vinha causando os danos. E além disso, em 2016, se eu não me engano, ela também teve um evento que a gente chama de chuva de prata, que foi quando os resíduos da produção industrial foi jogada, né, na comunidade, em cima das nossas casas, numa quantidade muito grande. E esses resíduos, eles são minúsculos, a gente não consegue ver muito bem. Então, a gente inala ele e fica no nosso corpo porque ele não a gente não consegue digeri-lo. Então, isso causa muitos problemas dermatológicos, pneumológicos, né? Além de câncer também. Então, ela traz diversos problemas, tanto na saúde quanto no meio ambiente. Ela também já causou enchentes em conjuntos habitacionais lá no São Fernando, porque quando ela também foi instalada, lá tem um rio que eles desviaram o percurso natural do rio em 90 graus para poder fazer a captação da água para usar na indústria. Então, quando eles fizeram esse desvio, ele alagou o conjunto inteiro por mais de uma semana, e isso aconteceu mais de uma vez. E isso ao longo dos anos, né? E atualmente a Ternium ela é responsável por mais de 50% da emissão de efeito estufa do Rio de Janeiro inteiro. Isso não é contabilizado pela prefeitura, né? Então ela é tirada dela essa responsabilidade. E além de acontecer diversos outros eventos de explosões que emitem também particulados, e eles não se responsabilizam por isso, eles falam que é somente uma poluição visual, um impacto visual. Não está acontecendo nada, aquele particulado ali não vai afetar a gente de nenhuma forma. Então, é um conjunto de danos, né, que é causado diariamente na casa das pessoas, na vida das mulheres, porque são as mulheres que estão ali no dia a dia, tendo que cuidar, tendo que limpar, porque a nossa casa não fica limpa, né? É o tempo todo caindo particulado, é o tempo todo a gente sentindo um cheiro muito forte de enxofre. À tarde, a partir das 5 horas da tarde, a gente consegue ver só o céu em cima, essa parte aqui, toda abóbora, ele fica toda abóbora. O restante do céu normal só em cima da empresa dessa cor. Então, é um conjunto de violações de direitos que a gente vem tentando, né, lutar contra todos esses anos, há mais de 10 anos.
Yeah, and we've seen tonight that many of these companies are primarily affecting... It's not being translated? Yeah? We've seen tonight that these companies are primarily affecting communities with low income, communities of color, indigenous communities. Is that something you recognize?
Sim, Santa Cruz é uma região da periferia do Rio de Janeiro, né, onde a maioria da sua população são pessoas pretas e pobres. E isso a gente vê por conta do racismo ambiental, onde essas empresas se instalam por conta dessas situações, onde o Estado ele é ausente e ela domina a região. A gente costuma dizer que ela tenta dominar os moradores, oferecendo projetos sociais, oferecendo empregos, só que os empregos que eles oferecem são de mão de obra pesada, dentro dos altos fornos, com temperaturas que a gente não aguenta. Então, as pessoas que moram ali na região, elas não têm um cargo mais sofisticado, né? Vamos dizer assim. Elas estão ali na linha de frente do perigo. E aí as pessoas, você vê que elas não conseguem ficar muito tempo, elas saem. Então, a gente convive com isso o tempo inteiro, porque é um ciclo, né? A empresa chega, ela se instala e domina. E ela faz com uma forma que parece que ela é boa, que tudo aquilo ali que ela está oferecendo para a comunidade é por conta dela, mas não, ela está só cumprindo obrigações que foram feitas na justiça, né? São TACs, termos de ajuste de conduta que ela não ajustou, na verdade.
Yeah, thank you. And we hear from you and from Rogelio, we hear this intertwinement also with the government and with political power. Is that something you recognize in Liberia as well?
Absolutely. The government receive kickbacks or bribes from the company, especially the local government officials where the companies are based. They get gasoline, they get rice, especially around election period. They provide state security forces to intimidate anyone with dissent. And the government is not for our people. The government, especially the judicial branch of government, our courts, especially in Africa, are corrupt, inherently corrupt. You that have the deepest pocket, meaning the ones with the more money, will be the one who will win that case. Or else you will go in circle and circle and circle until you get frustrated. And in most cases, the company will provide funding and create an auxiliary group, a parallel group against the advocacy group, and start to fund them adequately. And then they'll say something like, oh, you keep advocating, we are eating, you are jobless, we are benefiting. And in most cases, because of the longevity of the situation, people break. Poverty is that easy. People break ranks from the advocacy and join the company and the people.
Yeah, and Rogelio, you described a similar situation where it's very intertwined with political power. Do you feel that's also why it's also up to companies as ING to take care of these kinds of things or to take action?
Yo creo que las ONGs, su labor es importante en la comunidad, porque en un principio, como lo mencioné, la gente pues aceptaba, pero hoy no, o sea, hoy ven la empresa y no quieren saber nada, ¿sí? Lo peor es que el crimen organizado ha impuesto las autoridades, tanto como presidentes municipales y los mismos agentes, entonces eso ayuda a protegerlos. Entonces son pocos, pero tienen el crimen. La mayoría de la gente de la comunidad no está de acuerdo, pero están las autoridades que son las que ayudan a aplastar, a callar las voces que se manifiestan.
Yeah. I want to open up the space to the audience. We're running a little bit late, but are there any questions from the audience for one of our panel guests? I know it was quite overwhelming, everything we heard. Yeah.
Should I ask in English or Portuguese? I can do it also.
I mean, we have translation, so go for it in Portuguese, I would say.
Eu não sou super envolvida com esses tipos de tópicos, mas eu tô aqui para aprender e eu queria saber o que a gente pode fazer, tipo, aqui na Europa para ajudar. É só aprender sobre esses tópicos ou tem métodos mais diretos para ajudar as comunidades?
Eu acho que daqui o que pode ser feito é divulgar, ajudar, né, dar visibilidade à luta, porque são mais de 10 anos os moradores se mobilizando, os pescadores se mobilizando, tentando levar isso ao mundo, né? Hoje, estar aqui é parte disso. Eu estou aqui representando o meu coletivo, estou representando os moradores, os pescadores. Como o nosso companheiro falou, lá também a gente tem comunidade tradicional, né, dos pescadores que hoje já não conseguem mais sobreviver disso, por conta de todos os impactos que a empresa causou, tanto no rio quanto no curso dos rios, que eles não conseguem mais ter essa liberdade de ir e vir. Então, eu acho que quanto mais a gente conseguir difundir isso e pressionar a empresa e pressionar os governos também, porque eles também são responsáveis por isso, e as financiadoras, como o ING, né? Porque no momento em que eles estão financiando, eles também estão destruindo. Então, eu acho que fazer o que a gente fez hoje é muito importante e continuar fazendo cada vez mais. Obrigada.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice question. I actually want to ask it to everyone. John, do you have anything to add?
What happens in the global south directly and indirectly affects the global north. We are no longer separated by any divide. And so we need to collaborate. We need to work together to ensure that some of these things that affect the global south inadvertently will affect the global north, like climate change. We are all experiencing in both Europe, Asia, Africa, the adverse effect of how these companies are polluting the world. And so we said today, we are not the sacrifice zone. We are not. And being in Europe and somebody in the village in Nimba, Liberia, feeling the effect, eventually it's going to come at your doorstep. So you are not an island. And it's time that we all join ranks to see how we can all tell these companies, tell the banks that are financing the degradation of our climate and the world in general, that enough is enough. People should be put above profits.
Rogelio, for you, the same question.
Yo considero que es correcto pues la pregunta. Como ONGs sí podemos unir voces y hacer público el problema a las dependencias, a los medios y también como personas, porque ya lo decían aquí, creo que si el banco está financiando y no tiene conocimiento de lo que está pasando, yo creo que sí podemos hacer de su conocimiento escritos, mensajes, llamadas, en un medio publicitario, las redes sociales o periódicos, pero sí podemos hacer mucho, pero el hecho de que tengamos conocimiento de lo que está pasando, pues eso ayuda porque podemos compartir mensajes y esto se le está pasando en tal parte, no estamos solos, ¿sí? Creo que podemos tener de vecino una organización y no sabemos qué está viviendo en su lugar, en su comunidad. Entonces aquí yo creo que hay varias ONGs y si unimos esas voces, pues creo que estamos conscientes que son las empresas las mismas que están dañando allá. Creo que es el mismo patrón de que aplican para imponer su fuerza, para el saqueo, no importando lo que están contaminando, el daño. Creo que sí es correcto esa forma de ser público y conocernos.
Okay. Aline, do you have any last words for ING? What would you tell ING?
Que é um momento de parar de financiar esses tipos de empreendimentos, né? E no caso da Ternium, em Santa Cruz, que eles deveriam ser responsáveis também por reparar integralmente as pessoas que são atingidas todos os dias. Porque a gente tem mais de 200 ações judiciais contra a empresa há mais de 10 anos e até hoje nada foi feito, sabe? Então, ela tem que ser responsabilizada também, porque desde o momento que ela financia, ela está assinando embaixo. Então, eu acho que esses dois pontos seriam os mais importantes para a gente.
Any last words for ING, one of you? Or has everything been said?
Sí, ING es el banco. Sí, así es. Bueno, sí, dirigirme al banco, pues que efectivamente creo que tiene mucho que hacer el banco como responsable de estar financiando una empresa de que no sabe lo que daño que está causando. Yo sí agradecerles a las personas por su paciencia, a las ONGs que nos están aquí presentes y gracias por todo.
Thank you very much. John, last question. Unless you have words for ING as well, which you can certainly say, but do you have hope? Is there hope?
Yes, there is hope. We say in Liberia, every long rope in the bush has an end. And with the level of collaboration I see here, I see hope. I see a united front that this is no longer business as usual, where there is this dull AGM and people just go, yada, 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 and then they go away. And so with the level of enthusiasm in people from all over the world gathering here today, united for one cause, I see hope. But then I need to add that the pollution is affecting women and children. The gender aspect of these finances need to be highlighted. We cannot close our eyes to these women and children that get their daily bread from the forest. Women use the forest, especially in indigenous communities, to be able to find food and medicinal products for their family. If you damage the forest, besides the climate, you are starving women and you are starving families. Especially in Africa, women are the breadwinners. And so we must, together, collectively, ensure that ING put focus on the gender dimension of the financing. Thank you.
Okay, I have many more questions for you, but we're already way over time. I genuinely bow my head down for all the work you are doing, and I think I'm speaking of everyone. I want a very big round of applause for our guests. And for Melanie and John as well, of course. I want to thank you all for joining and listening to all of these stories. We already heard an amazing call to action, and I like to add two to them. One is to donate to the Vessel Project. Friends and comrades of John and Melanie in the US anti-LNG movement saw their office destroyed by a tornado. And to rebuild their space, they need financial support. If you can, consider donating to rebuild their space. And we have a QR code here that you can use. And the second one is join ING Fossil Free. ING will not stop with their financing of fossil fuels and steel on their own. They need to feel the pressure coming from all sides, and there is a unique way for all of us to put this pressure. In the hall, there will be people at the table from the movement to talk with you. So if you want, you're not joined yet and you're interested, go talk to them, or if you're completely overloaded with all the stories we heard tonight, which I can also imagine, you can go online to ING Fossielvrij, this is in Dutch, .nl. Thanks again to everyone and to the organizers, Banktrack and Fossil Free ING as well.